I gotta do that. I gotta do the preamble. Sorry, I gotta do it. It's starting a new episode. We're gonna do it. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you are in the world. And welcome to another episode of Endurance Chat. My name is Michael Zalavari, and today I am joined by lead commentator, well, not quite lead commentator, one of the commentators on the WC World feed, lead commentator of the Asian Le Mans series, lead analyst, and on lead analyst on the ELMS. And,
yes.
And commentator of the Michelin Le Mans Cup and the Leisure European Series, editor-in-chief of Daily Sports Cars, and actually runs the Week in Sports Cars with Marshall Pruitt. The other voice in that one, welcome to the show, Graham Goodwin.
It's me. That's me. I recognise myself from that description.
Awesome. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, mate.
Yeah, first of all, how are you going? How is the week panning out for you?
Well, it's a public holiday here in the UK, which I'd completely forgotten about. So when I made a few calls to various people this morning, number one, most of them weren't answering the phone because they're not at work, and number two, the ones that did were a bit annoyed. So so that's fine. Just remind them they are in motorsport. There are no days off. But no, it's fine. It's a little bit dull here in the UK. For those that don't know, I'm just a little bit south of London, up on Epsom Downs. We've had some lovely weather, but it's getting a little bit ropey right now. We were hoping to be joined by special guest Oscar the Husky. He may decide to pop in while we're recording this. Generally speaking, the routine is between now and about 1 o'clock. He comes back from his morning walk and then accompanies my lunch down to the office with the lovely Trudy, and then proceeds to eat half of my lunch. So that's the way things are rolling at the moment. Busy weekend of racing just done, just catching up with the last bits and pieces from that, and prepping now for WEC next weekend. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, next weekend. It comes along very quickly. And a conversation that we were having earlier today, it is only 6 weeks until Le Mans, Graham.
Stop talking about that now.
Okay. We'll leave that alone.
It's carnage. We have the vague plan that we have is, as always, so involved. The problem, of course, is I have two jobs at Le Mans.
Yeah.
In the first part of the week, I'm the editor of Daily Sports Car. The second part of the week, I leave that from about Wednesday onwards. I stop doing Daily Sports Car things and go and do TV things, which means we then have two other teams, a team on site and a team from distance, catching up with all the things that are going on. But look, I love the Le Mans 24 Hours more than words can say. I think I'm right. This year will be my, how many? 26th, 27th?
Wow.
Le Mans. But it is really, really hard work.
Yeah.
It is delightful, though, that we can have people back in proper numbers. So all of that's going to going on, and that involves two cars, one ferry, one tunnel, one person coming by car but going home by air, and me trying to arrange to pick up a load of kit and caboodle because Martin Haven's car's broken.
Oh, no.
So things like the kettle and the coffee machine have to be picked up. So it's all a bit messy at the moment. But that will get sorted. As with the stuff you see on track, motorsport runs on logistics, and it is all a matter of getting people and things at the right time, at the right kind of money from places, as you're finding out with Bathurst, Michael.
Yes.
It is a king-size pain in the ass. So this week, for instance, Norfolk, driven in Rapid Lotus, drive back from Norfolk directly to Rochester in Kent, where I pick up Pedro the photographer.
Yep.
Take Pedro the photographer to Tunnel, go through Tunnel, drive from there to Charleroi Airport, where we pick up Drew Gibson, another photographer, take him to his hotel in Spa, go to our hotel at Spa, relax.
Wow. Okay.
That's life, basically.
I will return to that because there's a question that we've got about the travel and that sort of stuff. But before we jump into everything proper, I do want to say, firstly, a big shout out to everyone who sent in questions on our Reddit thread. If you commented on the thread or in the Discord as well, thank you very much. That's given me, I think we've got 3 pages worth of questions that will I've picked out bits and pieces and I've tried to combine them. So we'll
Lucky I'm
try.
not busy then, eh?
Well, it's going to get late here in Australia soon, so I'm
That's
keen
fine.
to get through at a cracking pace.
That's fine.
Secondly, I have to say a shout out to our sponsor, TheRacingLine.App, your motorsport calendar. Download that on the iOS store or the apps, the Google store, to give you updates on calendar changes and alerts for different sessions. They've been very good to us, so thank you for their continued support. Graham, let's start with well, you just mentioned that it's going to be your 26th Le Mans.
I think 95, missed 96, then every year from 97, 97, 98, 99, 2005, 27th.
27th. Wow, that is
26 of which have been consecutive. That's correct.
that is
I still feel like a new boy.
really
Genuinely.
wow.
There are a lot of people that have done a lot more than I have, including a lot of fans who've been there for many, many years, which is why 2020 was so sad, because it did mean that a lot of people's run was broken. I did manage to get there in 2020, but an awful lot of people didn't.
Yeah, and that is such a special thing to have that like unbeaten
Yeah,
run of yeah.
it's yeah,
So
it's like heroin. It's a habit.
right, okay. Well, it's going to be that type of show. We're going to a question from Johannes. Johannes Meanad is his Reddit handle. Everyone in the Discord would know him as Johan. Where and when was the first endurance race you attended live? And what was the experience of that event? Was it at Le Mans?
No, it wasn't. It was at Brands Hatch. So that was. So I've been racing before, but not a lot. Principally because my closest track to my home was Alton Park.
Okay,
I come
yeah.
from the northwest of England, and neither of my parents drove. So getting there, you were basically beholden to other people. So you never had a car.
Yeah.
So motorsport came a little later with me. In terms of the first endurance race I attended, it was 1988. It was one of only two Group C races I ever attended.
Wow.
And it was Brands Hatch, I think the 500-kilometer race, and it was the Saubers and the Jaguars. And those of you that trawl, as I know a lot of you do, YouTube, there's an infamous incident involving a little Tiger trying to get to the pits that is collected heavily by one of the Saubers. And then there's an astonishing avoidance by the second Sauber spinning to avoid the wreckage, and the Jaguar kind of gets through. The Jaguar won the race. That was my first endurance race. And if you actually look really, really carefully at that shot, what you'll see is me with my now ex-wife and my then very young son in his pushchair at the fence line, right there where that actually happened.
Wow.
Going, look at that! So that was my first endurance racing experience. It came back much later, oddly enough, as a result of the end of that first marriage. And I think, as I've said before, you get a choice. You involve yourself with your children, or you don't. And there was never any doubt in my mind that I was going to involve myself with my son, who's now 35 years old, by the way. And we started going racing every couple of weeks when I could, to do with the job I did at that time. So about every couple of weeks, we'd rock up to Brands Hatch, and this was those glory days of 8, 9 factory teams in super touring. British GT was fantastic. BPR was around at that time, and that lit the fire. And as I've regularly said, it was James, my son, wanted to go to Le Mans. He wanted to go and watch the McLarens, so we did. We got on the coach and we went to Le Mans in 1995. Missed 96 because of work, and then I've been back every year since and started working there in 2001 as a writer. And I think the first year I picked up a microphone there was 05 or 06.
Wow.
So I've been basically working, either for Radio Le Mans or latterly for the international feed for TV, close to 20 years now.
Jeez.
Which,
Yeah.
when you say like that, it does feel like a long time. But yeah, but that was the first race.
That was the first one. So Brands Hatch was your local circuit.
Very much so, about 25 minutes down the road.
Yeah.
And we watched everything there. I mean, you name it, we went and saw it. Apart from not very many bike races, I think I've only ever seen 2 bike races ever, and one of those was a sidecar race, and
Okay.
that was part of a kind of one of our national newspapers did a thing where it was a pound day. You paid £1.
Yep.
There was something of everything, including a bit of Formula One excitement and an air show for £1.
Wow.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah. It's such a shit newspaper, but there you go.
So racing then sort of became a family thing for you with something that you did with your son?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And yeah, but oddly enough, racing had been something that, in this case, Formula One was something that me and my ex were into. We were Formula One fans at the time, followed the likes of Mansell through his career. And yeah, it's like a lot of us, it's an interest that turns into something a bit more than that. And I switched onto it pretty quickly. I think, as many of you know, I trained as a journalist, but didn't work as a journalist for many years. Decided that was something I perhaps wanted to get involved in, effectively as a sideline, as a hobby, but couldn't while I was still working in government. So that kind of came around. That's why the time frame, 2000, 2001, I left government in 98, 99. And by 2000, I was working in the background doing British races for Malcolm Cracknell. And 2002, DSC was established, and this will be our 20th anniversary Le Mans this year.
Well, congratulations on 20 years.
Yeah, we got some surprises to come for that one. It's going to be good fun.
I'm very intrigued to see what happens there. So that's actually quite a lot of eras in racing then that you've been watching. You said that your first race was a Group C race, and then now here we are talking about Le Mans Hypercar. That's what 40 years since Group C.
Yeah, it is this year's is the 40th anniversary. In fact, this month is the 40th anniversary of the Porsche 956.
Yeah.
So it's, and you know what, those cars still look modern.
Yeah, they do. It's the sleek lines.
It's something about the way those Group C cars were kind of put together, and they're still absolutely beautiful. But it's interesting when you speak to some of the faces in racing. Alex Wurz is a classic. So Alex, much as he has been there and he's done that, and he's done well in Formula One, he's been president of the GP Drivers Association. His dream was drive sports cars, and the reason it was drive sports cars is because he went to some kind of motor show when he was in karting, and there was a presentation, and the two cars that were presented, the drivers that presented, I'm trying to think who the owner of the car was. There was his kart and a Group C 956, and he said, as an impressionable kid, he'd never seen anything more astonishing, and that lit the fire. And his story, we'll do an in-depth one with Alex at some point. His story it's a beautiful thing of doing as well as he possibly could with the talents, the opportunities he had. It was getting his chance in Formula One because he won Le Mans.
Yeah.
And if you've not heard that story, it's a cracker. It's Flavio Briatore took a meeting with him, clearly didn't want the meeting with him, was pretty dismissive. And basically what he said to Alex was, well, I'll tell you what then, what's your next race? Well, my next race is Le Mans. You win Le Mans, come back and we'll give you a test. And he won Le Mans.
And he won Le Mans.
And he got a test.
Wow.
So he'd be an excellent subject for a long form podcast, and that one's on a long list of things to do when I finally get around to doing it.
Fantastic. Oh wow, we're getting to peek at everything that's coming up as well. Look at that. I've got quite a few questions about Le Mans Hypercar, and so there's a few that I wanted to get through while we're on the topic. The first one comes from Michael Baranowski on Reddit. He says, "What's your opinion about the Hypercar nomenclature?" He goes on to say that it's created a bit of confusion among fans, especially those coming in to the sport for the first time. What were your thoughts? If I recall correctly, initially the plan was that fans were going to be able to vote for their choice of the name. Do you think they should have? Do you think they should have stayed with P1?
No, I think if you're going to make a change, you need to make a change.
Yeah.
I'm not a massive fan of the name. I think GTP is fantastic. I think that's very relevant, etc. I understand why they've gone down that road. It became, I think, a bit of a boat anchor around the neck. It's beginning to focus now and make a little bit more sense. I've been working on a couple of projects to effectively a Sports Car 101 thing,
Yeah.
which I'd like to help. You will by now, I'm sure, be bored that every time I write about Hypercar, I link the two pieces I did that explain the difference between LMDH, etc., etc. We do seem in sports car racing to have this fantastic talent for making things more complicated than they really need to be.
And it's already a complicated sport as it is. I mean, we've got like
There you go.
pit
So,
stops with.
I think.
Anyway, yeah. Sorry.
Just don't get me started. But I think in this case, it's a bit of an accident of history. The way that these regulations evolved was not the way in which they were intended to. We all know the story about the Aston Martin Valkyrie. Is it going to happen? Isn't it going to happen? Etc. Etc. That was unfortunate. Where we are now, though, I think basically what all of us need to do, myself included, is get over ourselves a little bit and just, we are where we are. It is actually genuinely quite simple now.
Yeah.
Okay. It's quite simple in the same way that LMP1 had cars that were hybrid and cars that weren't. They were two different rule sets. No one ever got out the tree about LMP1 being that different.
No.
So let's kind of say, right, okay, so Hypercar is at the moment 3 different types of cars. We lose the grandfathered LMP1 cars. Next year we gain the LMDH cars. So it is basically just a group of cars, performance balanced into one class.
Yeah.
Actually, not that different to GT3 if you think about it.
No,
other
not
than
at
the
all.
fact hybrid involved, blah blah blah. The complication then comes that, of course, IMSA have got the same groups of cars, but have got a different name for them. So that's what it is. I see this pretty simply in these terms. That's my job to explain it to you.
Yeah.
That's my job. Okay. And the only time I ever get in any way, never shouty, but aerated about it, is if when I'm trying to explain to those that I'm working with and for that that's our job, and they then make it more complicated or difficult, or try to put other kind of, but you can't do this, you can't do that. Right, stop. The key thing is your audience understand your product. If I'm telling you they don't understand your product, then either go and find evidence that I'm wrong, or please listen, because I don't tend to open my mouth in those kind of circumstances unless there's something that needs to be said. So I think the answer here is, it is getting easier now. We're getting to the stage where it's real, and it's got shape. And it is as simple as Hypercar is a class. There are 2 different sorts of car in that class. GTP is exactly the same in a different championship.
Yeah.
Okay? But exactly the same way as GT3 in SRO rules is GT3. SP9 is GT3. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You're just calling something different. So I guess it's this. We're kind of stumbling through into the light, but there's an important message for those people listening to this, because generally speaking, you are in a group that's a far more engaged group of fans, which is, look at it this way. We all know the difference between a Reddit thread or Discord chat, or for that matter, a YouTube chat that is functional and one that's dysfunctional. Be the guy that actually helps people to get through this. Yeah, you're going to get the kind of Turkish nutters and the, the Polish nutters. And,
speaking from explicit experience.
F1 is going to be on in 5 minutes.
Oh
and
my God.
Which car's Valentino Rossi in? Okay, fine. We can deal with the deadheads separately. If someone's got a question, there are no stupid questions. There are no stupid questions. Be kind, I think, is that, and be constructive, because I do think there is a real opportunity here to make a fundamental difference in the way that this part of the sport is regarded. And once it's regarded in a more positive way, the opportunities for all of us to enjoy it with better coverage, more free coverage, more in-depth coverage, more access, those are there if we can make a success of this formula. And that's why it's so important right now. That's why I spend a lot of my time sitting down with people in all sorts of places, whether it's manufacturers, teams, championships, etc., to basically say, have you considered this? And increasingly, they're open to those suggestions.
Cool.
Constructive, positive critique is a good thing. And I think more and more people are seeing that. They need help. Is what it comes down to.
Yeah, of course. Do you think the name of the class should have had a rethink once we got into seeing the cars properly, or was it once it was set in stone, it was set in stone?
I think they decided pretty early. The hypercar thing. I'm pretty clear this is very much a Pierre Fillon project.
Okay.
This is all about Pierre's vision, Pierre's legacy. I think once he decided that was right, I think the other thing to bear in mind, and it's something that has come up pretty repeatedly in conversations that we've had on the Discord and Reddit, which is don't forget we are dealing with an organization for whom English is not the first language.
Yeah, okay.
And I think it's a little bit like, do you call it the Le Mans 24 Hours or the 24 Hours of Le Mans? That debate comes from the language. It's the same with things like the FI, all of it. We just, I think, have to be a little bit more internationalist about it. And, if I don't particularly like the word hypercar, you know what? I'll get over it.
Yeah.
It's not like it's look at what else is going on in the world at the moment.
Yeah.
It's not a crisis. I think the reality is that's what it's called. The difference, I think, is that we are pretty uniquely looking at a major class of racing cars that's not defined by a group of letters and numbers. And in some ways, that's a good thing.
Yeah, I guess
it's because here's the thing: hypercar. What's hypercar? Well, they're hypercars. They're really, really quick cars. LMP1. What's that? Well, that's Le Mans Prototype 1.
Yeah.
Then you've got to explain it again. So it's sort of turn the argument on its head. It is actually a simpler concept. To think about it, it is what it says on the tin. These are, forget what came before. Group C cars did that, and LMP1 cars did that, and LMP1 hybrids, amazing though they were, did that. History. What have we got now? These are the quickest cars in this form of sports car racing. That's it. They're hypercars.
Yeah.
And everything else falls out from that. Think about it in those terms, and it does make more sense.
Awesome. That's actually a really nice way of sort of putting it. You mentioned crisis. Speaking of crisis, ByKolles and Vanwall. We got a few questions about that.
Bet you did.
Zanion asking, with ByKolles having minor issues with the Vanwall name, what are the chances of actually using their car in a race? And another, we'll leave that other question for a follow-on. But what do you think? How do you sum up the Vanwall ByKolles thing? Like, what
might be useful to have a really quick trot through where things currently stand.
Yeah.
Okay. So it is an issue about trademarking. You can trademark more or less anything. So the Vanwall trademark. And if those that don't know what Vanwall is, last raced at a world championship level in 1958, even before I was born, and I'm pretty damn old. So the a Vanwall name was initially re-registered by an organisation in the UK, Vanwall 1958, who wanted to build complete replicas of the 1958 World Championship. They were the first manufacturers' world champions in 58. That process has been delayed by COVID, as you might expect. So they registered the Vanwall trademark, and they registered it, as I understand, in the UK and in the EU. PMC GmbH, which is the company that is effectively the backer for ByKolles, then went and registered the trademark, I want to say last year, might be a year before, but last year in Germany, and have challenged the trademarking in the EU as being dormant without commercial activity, which is a bit cheeky, bearing in mind the international situation. They have also attempted to register a worldwide trademark for Vanwall, and I believe have also registered German and EU trademarks for Vandervelde, which is Tony Vandervelde is the van behind Vanwall.
Okay. Yeah.
So the current debate is an argument about the validity of the EU trademark. If the EU trademark is invalidated to the UK entity, then Vanwall will be fine. Things aren't going that smoothly on that front. My understanding is, and I've got the paperwork that shows that trademark was renewed for a further 10 years last month.
Right.
If that's the case, that effectively invalidates the German trademark and the worldwide trademark, because you can't have a worldwide trademark if you've not got Europe.
Yeah.
That means, in law, that Vanwall, the team, are only allowed currently, and even this is arguable, to run the car as a Vanwall and to promote the car as a Vanwall in Germany, which is a bit useless if you're contesting a world championship that doesn't have a race in Germany.
Have a race in Germany, yeah.
So I'm fully aware of that. I've zero doubt that ByKolles are fully aware of that. The UK entity is absolutely fully aware of that, and I can tell you the ACO and LMEM are fully aware of that. So the answer to your question is, increasingly, unless a financial solution is sought by ByKolles with the existing trademark owners, which does not seem to be part of the plan, there seems little chance that car will run as a Vanwall, because the one thing you can guarantee is the ACO are not going to involve themselves in anybody else's legal fight.
Yeah.
I think one of the other questions is likely to be, why Vanwall?
We can ask that.
Long story. There is there's a regulation that talks about what you have to be or what approvals you have to have to operate in Hypercar. Vanwall faintly ticks that box.
Yeah.
Whereas ByKolles doesn't.
So we did get a question talking about what defines a manufacturer in LMH. So is this the ticking box here? Is this what ByKolles is trying to do?
I think they're trying to sort of sidestep it. They have said they will build road-going versions of the car. Okay. All I'd say is this. To get to that point, there would have had to have been a series of conversations or correspondence with the sporting side of the ACO. They wouldn't have got...
Oh, I think we just lost Graham briefly. So so there's conversations with the ACO.
Yep. Conversations with the ACO. Strikes me as they've made things very much more complicated for themselves than they should have done. As I was saying to someone last week, you do wonder why they've not picked up the phone to Christian Koenigsegg or someone else to say, here's an easy way in. And you can, I think, make your own mind up why it is that they didn't or haven't done that with TVR or with Koenigsegg or with anybody else that might have that ambition. I think they just need to concentrate on the stuff that they can do well. Yep. It's a shame. Car looks great.
Car does look great.
No reason why that car shouldn't be as competitive as, say, a Glickenhaus is. But as for the difference between Glickenhaus and, for that matter, Peugeot, because I know that's been part of the discourse as well. Well, Glickenhaus are building road cars.
Yeah,
full stop.
Absolutely.
Forget the IMSA issue with Glickenhaus for a moment. Glickenhaus are a car builder. Peugeot signed up to the homologation process. Here's the main difference, though. Peugeot actually do own the name Peugeot.
Yeah. There's no dispute
there's
with
no
Peugeot.
Doubt about that. There's no dispute at all. This is different.
A follow-on from that question, which we got from Solgiero, is could a team like Sauber or like Williams, for example, build an LMH and run it in WEC as an established name like that? Is it explicitly a privateer thing, or does there have to be some sort of significant backing from a race team?
I'm pretty certain that the regulation's there for all to see, by the way. But as with everything in regulations, it's open to interpretation. And there is always in a regulation unless we say different regulation.
Yeah. And the regulations in French are open to interpretation, because is it with the ACO that the French is if there's any dispute?
Correct.
Yeah,
absolutely right. So it's open to interpretation. It's open to interpretation. Why? What's not open to interpretation is the main stumbling block is ACO are not convinced that ByKolles can prove that they own the rights to that name. Okay. Yeah. And they're not going to get themselves in a court case allowing that to happen on their ground. Of course they're not. Would they have accepted ByKolles? The signs are that they would not have accepted ByKolles. Okay. And quite why? Well, we don't know all the reasons why. You might reasonably presume that there might be some history there.
Okay.
In terms of the commercial arrangements between the two parties. So the the undeniable truth here is the ACO, LMEM, the WEC don't need ByKolles to make the show anymore. And that's where I think Colin and his people may have stumbled here pretty badly. I think they've made a wrong choice. They've made this significantly more complex for themselves than they could and should have done. And I genuinely can't believe there weren't other brands out there where a reasonably capable commercial entity could have gone in there, offered someone a real prospect for a shop window, and come away with what they really need, which is a letter with the letterhead at the top of that brand and the agreement of the CEO to say, yes, you can use our name.
Yeah, it does seem. We do like to meme on ByKolles quite a fair bit in the r/WC community because they make it so easy. They make it so easy for us. But the following question from Zanayan is: in your career as a motorsport journalist, have you ever seen something like this or worse?
Oh yeah. I mean, look, it happens all over the place. I mean, whether or not you're talking, life everywhere is full of shit. It's full of shithousery, isn't it? Really?
Yeah,
it really is. And sports car racing, as we've seen even this week, is full of characters that will try to push the edges. The P1 Motorsports, I can't remember the name of the dodgy Colombian bloke putting in hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Medicare claims for prosthesis, but who's now going to be serving some hard time. There's always been stuff like that. There's always been people doing things with brands that they shouldn't. There's all sorts of levels at which. One of my favourites is when Marcel Tenkat, you may or may not be familiar with.
I've heard of it.
Now, Marcel used to run a website called Project Le Mans, Dutch, and most recently was the press officer for the GT4 European Series. But Marcel worked with Daily Sports Car for a number of years, and one of the stories that he sniffed out was a almost hilarious lack of synergy about the GT3 homologation of the Chevrolet Camaro. And at one point, there were 3 separate and parallel Camaro GT3 programs, 2 of which made it to the track. Okay, because everybody seemed to believe they'd got the approval of Chevrolet to do this. It went eventually, of course, to Hans Reiter with the Serini car. But look back on our Daily Sports Car archive, and you'll see at least 2 of those cars made it to the track, and that all has to be kind of sorted out. It should be simple, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
But, an expression of interest is not a signed contract, waiver, or agreement, and you can and do see it from time to time with brands being bandied around. I can remember ages ago a team telling me that they were looking to buy 2 separate brands. One was Jensen, the other one was Lister. Well, knowing who at that stage owned the Lister name, and talking to the person that I was talking to, it's pretty obvious they were in dreamland. And in fact, oddly enough, they're now another person in motorsport that's actually doing hard time.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, okay.
The reality is, look, things of value are actually of value, and there's therefore usually a cost to those things. Trying to short circuit that to your own monetary advantage doesn't tend to go well. I think in this case, what I'd like to see Colin and this crazy gang do is either sit down with the UK people and make this right, because that's what needs to be done, or go and call it something else.
Yeah. Like, I mean, we've had a suggestion from our live chat that Spiker's the name that is probably out of money at the moment, maybe?
Can't, because unfortunately they've got a Russian primary shareholder now.
Well,
but there is one other that I'm at a loss to understand why are not involved. And that's Praga. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, if it gets the letterhead, if they get that letterhead.
I reckon that's a meeting Praga would take in a second if everything's straight here. I think they'd take that meeting and say, I can't understand why Vanwall. I mean, it's not like Colin Collins is sitting there dreaming of 1958.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's just not. There's some nonsense involved here, and I don't fully understand it. But I am increasingly disappointed in a number of my journalistic colleagues.
Looks like we've lost Randy. So you were just saying that you were increasingly
disappointed with journalistic colleagues for ignoring the fact that at the moment you've got a motorsport organisation riding roughshod over someone else's rights. That's not the way this should be. The question should be asked. I've been attempting to ask the question now for months. Let's not get carried away with the romance of the privateer here. This is something a bit different.
Yeah.
This is something that needs to be right. And frankly, if Colin was sitting here right now, I'd be saying the same to him, which is, Colin, it's pretty clear. You're a Johnny-come-lately here. You know what the guy's name and number is. Pick up the phone and come to a deal. Or, cough.
There we go. There's the klaxon. You actually got tipped off to that from a Reddit thread, if I recall correctly. Yeah.
Completely correct.
So are you going through our comments looking for interesting tidbits like that?
No. I mean, I increasingly I find that reaching out directly to engaged fans is a positive part of my life. And on the odd occasion, someone will find a link or someone will find a story or something like that, where you can then take that another step or another step or another step. And it's ideas. I mean, look, I'm at the moment pretty much solo, not quite solo, filling a sports car racing website 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Yeah.
I spent a good part of yesterday doing 3 things, none of which you're going to see for at least a month. One of which is, you and I have talked about it, trying to pluck up the energy to caption a 60-plus picture gallery of every LMP2 car that's ever raced since 2004. There's some more of that kind of stuff that's coming in the preview stuff for Le Mans, and that involved me finding 150-plus photographs from our archive, which I did. And then the third part of it is looking for stuff to celebrate the 20 years that Daily Sports Cars covered the Le Mans 24 hours. So some of that will be coming together. So there's a lot of heavy lifting to be done before you ever get to the stage where a story appears on a website. And yeah, if I can find something that makes life a little bit easier and get something up that people engage with and are enthused by, yeah. And in that case, that was really good detective work by that individual, and all credit to them. It's a straight answer.
Yeah, I was just mostly just like chuffed to see Reddit get mentioned in a Daily Sports Car article. That was something very unusual.
It's a bit like, the collective joy when you realised that Eduardo had discovered
on Discord.
Of Discord.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
That is because he used it for the first time at the first virtual Le Mans and found it a better system than the one RCNS that we're currently using in WEC. And look, isn't that something we've seen over the last 10 years or so, which is motorsport organisations, particularly on the safety management front, getting over themselves a bit. I mean, when you get into the kind of virtual safety car, come on.
Yeah.
Just give credit where credit's due, and it's a good idea, and we've taken this from someone, rather than trying to pretend you've come up with it yourself.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, stop it. And it is that kind of, I don't have a lot of patience with the not invented here attitude, to be honest with you. If it's better, and in this case, if it's safer, and it's quicker, and it's more reliable, why the hell wouldn't you use it?
Absolutely, and we've got quite a few people in our live chat at the moment. We've got a little Eduardo sticker. I'm not sure if you can. I'm sure you get shown it. Just putting that on. He's quite a loved figure in our community.
Well, I mean, by the way, if you've not seen the ins and outs of what's happening there, I did get a chance finally to catch up with Eduardo at Paul Ricker of the LMS. So can now confirm, although this was confirmed some time ago, there's not really been a public statement. Eduardo will be on board for the full WEC this year, including Le Mans.
Fantastic.
He'll be doing half of the LMS as well.
Sweet.
So he'll be doing 3 of the 6 races where there's no clash, and our Bahraini friend will be filling in for the other three.
Cool. That's awesome to hear. It's great to hear his voice over the radio.
Absolutely.
We've got a few questions now about the follow-on effect of LMH. So one of them is about LMP2. This one comes from Ozarip. With the expected growth and the union of LMH and LMDH, what do you see happening with LMP2 as the grids begin to fill with hypercars? Because, I mean, next year for 2023, we're expecting, 15 full season entry for Le Mans? No?
Well, maybe for Le Mans. But, I mean, I think there's two or three things going on. So one of the other stories I've been trying to nail down, but it's about the shape of Hypercar GTP 23 to 24. The big obviously the Audi program withdrawal has had some knock-on effects. I've noticed Dan Lloyd from Sports Car 365 put something up about WRT and their intentions. I know exactly what WRT are sniffing around, and have known that since Sebring.
Would that seem to start with a P and end with an Orsha, or am I off base there? No? Okay, well there we go.
No. The big issue at the moment is how much is it going to cost, and there are some significant stories that I need to be quite careful about the way I write. It means that I think you're going to see a slower rollout to private teams of some of these LMDHs. It principally surrounds cost. So number one, I think conservative next year. There are going to be more cars in the top class. There are going to be exciting cars in the top class. Anybody that's thinking about 15, 16 cars for the full season, I think you could be disappointed. I think the same applies in the United States. It will get there, but it might take a year or so to get there. And there's all sorts of reasons behind it. And we're all going to get really bored of the phrase supply chain.
Yeah.
Trust me, it's a massive, massive issue right now. And supply chain issues, you can get over those, but you can get over those at a cost. And I am beginning to hear about cost escalation. But let's not lose the question. The question is about LMP2. And I think the answer there is there's a lot currently up for grabs. It's not a surprise, but the emerging story here is, what are the big LMP2 teams going to do next year in 2024? And I think increasingly those big LMP2 teams, if they can't nail down a hypercar program, are going to start looking at GT3. That's what I think is going to happen. And I think a part of that is because just the way the history has worked going forward, that you can't have certainty yet about what the shape of LMP2 is going to be. I actually have a pet idea. This is my idea, and it's not come from anybody at LMEM, and they might, as I say these words...
This is a Graham Goodwin exclusive, everyone.
Stop. Well, I think it's actually a pretty simple one. Everybody's looking for more space for cars that can bring in more income. Income comes with manufacturer interest, particularly, or with big sponsor interest. And there's little doubt that that's going to come from LMH, from Hypercar rather, and from GT3 moving forward, because customer sport do put money in. Which means for your biggest events, principal concentration needs to be in the top class and in the GT class, which there will be one, for the WEC. Which begs the question, if you've got, let's say, the opportunity to put in, let's say, 35 cars for a WEC season, and let's say you do get to 15, no doubt in my mind, you can certainly fill a WEC race with a further 20 GT3 cars. So don't have LMP2 or WEC. Don't have LMP2 as the top class for the European Le Mans Series, the Asia Le Mans Series, but guarantee that the top 10 cars from that series will go to Le Mans.
Okay.
Do that.
Yeah.
So make that more sustainable. Give people something of value. If there is space for an invitation class for maybe Spa or maybe one or two other races, then do so. But remove that out and give, because what people are looking for is certainty.
Yes.
Certainty that they will get into the on the grid. Certainty, particularly that they will go to Le Mans, because that supports that that business model. That is very wealthy people with multi-millions every year of disposable income that want to use that multi-millions not only to have fun and to compete and to win something of value in racing in a championship, but particularly to go to the biggest race in the world, and that's Le Mans. So for me, if they're not thinking of that, it probably should be. And I know there'll be some people, with their hair on fire. The reality is the world has changed. If you can find space with LMP2 class and WEC, if Hypercar does lift off to the point where we all hope it can get into the mid-teens and go further north, great. But that has a consequence in terms of space on the grid.
Yeah.
And if you look at the kind of budgets for GT3 and LMP2, the reality is that GT3 is going to be probably more expensive than LMP2 in the first place.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. It's why you're seeing now to give you for instance, I'm trying to think of the numbers. A Ferrari 488 GT3 costs something like 4 times the amount per kilometer than a Lamborghini Huracan GT3.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Because you're paying to drive a Ferrari.
And there are aspects of the way the package is. The new Ferrari cuts that price almost in half, but is still more expensive than a Lamborghini.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're reducing the price point, the operating price point of owning and racing a Ferrari. You're still paying a premium for that brand. These are the realities that people don't see when you're dealing with the astonishing cost of international motorsport. Absolutely astonishing costs involved in it. So they're the kind of things that need to be taken into account. And then you look from there to Hypercar, and the prices are just bonkers.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hearing at the moment the cheapest route in, with possible exception of the Glickenhaus, to Hypercar is something like 2.5 to 3 times the cost of a current Ferrari GTE car.
Wow.
Okay. And then you've got the running costs, which are about another 50% on top of a current running budget for a GTE or an MP2 car. So you're talking, including buying the car, something getting close to 8 figures for a year.
For a single year.
You can amortize that car over several years. It's not as simple as go and turn up and pay over your €2.5 million for a Porsche LMDH and go and run it, because you're then going to go and find another 5 million to run the thing.
Yeah.
So I think we might well see some differences in the shape of the grids than perhaps people are expecting. If they're not thinking about LMP2 in those terms, my view is they're making a mistake.
Yeah. Do you think we see then a reduction of amateur racing in the WEC and at Le Mans? If there's a concentration of Hypercar and GT3?
No, because GT3 is going to be Pro-Am.
Entirely?
It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So here's the point. If you add up what we've got in the WEC at the moment, let's say 32 cars, 5 or 6 of them are Hypercars. At the moment, 5 or 6 of them are GTD-Pro. They're your pro cars.
Yeah.
So let's say that's 12 to 15 cars in a good year. This year's not a good year in terms of numbers, okay? Well, that's what we're looking at for Hypercar combined. So that's your pro. Then the AM side of things is everything else, which is your LMP2 and GTMs. Same kind of split, I think. The opportunities are still going to be there. And I think, actually, in terms of the way that the sport is evolving, if it was me and I had the money and the talent to go racing and wanted and was enthused to go and do these big race meetings, and you want to go and talk to your buddies in whether or not it's property or whether or not it's whatever it is.
Yeah.
What do you think they're going to be more impressed by you telling you did that weekend? I went and raced an Orsha, or I went and raced a Lamborghini, or a Aston Martin, or a McLaren, or a Ferrari. Yeah. There's no doubt that car has more cachet. And by the way, the lasting value of those cars as an investment is significantly greater depending on the brand of the car and, frankly, the success you have with that individual car as that moves forward. So it's another kind of layer the onion, if you like, as you peel it back and peel it back, what the privateer teams are desperate for is a business model that they can sustain not just their current customers, but can keep that conveyor belt rolling.
Yeah.
That's the really important part. And increasingly, if you've got LMP2 being dumbed down, reeled back in, those cars are less of an experience for the gentleman drivers, serious gentleman drivers. And that's where we're beginning to get to the stage where some of the guys that, have been racing them for many years are talking to me quietly in the background and saying, not float my boat anymore.
Yeah, and this is a concept that I talked about. It would have been 3 or 4 years ago now, when we were looking at the very end of LMP1 as a two manufacturer endeavor. The idea of pace creep. So we were looking at Le Mans last year, and we saw that the GTE cars were doing lap times faster than the GT1 Porsche in the historic event. We were looking at the LMP2 17 cars, which were doing lap times faster than Audi's R18 in 2011.
Yep.
And then while LMP1,
and then all of a sudden, we're
top...
being told that hypercars are slow.
Yeah.
They're not slow.
They're slow.
Epic. But they're just not as fast as the bonkers mobiles that cost 10 times more than they did.
And
I think the reality is. Sorry, you asked the question.
The question I want to ask is did everything creep too far while LMP1H was at its most bonkers, and now that we're reeling everything in, does that mean that we've kind of jumped the shark, and pulling everything back is making those guys who are in those LMP2 cars less interested in racing those cars?
Okay, I think what you've got, and I think there's a fair amount of the audience of this show is part of this group, which is nostalgia is a fantastic thing. Okay, nostalgia does have phases. So if you can imagine people who were massively into Group C at the time, and then what happened in the early 90s, and it all went boom, and then you came in with much slower GT1 cars. I mean, significantly slower GT1 cars. Isn't that the same thing?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And yet, is anybody at the moment saying that GT1 cars are anything other than awesome?
No, they're not. Yeah, that's a good point.
Why different?
Yeah.
Okay. The reality is, it's not about speed, it's about competition. It's not about ultimate speed, it's about competition. And then you've got to consider the next thing, which is, no doubt, this is a formula that is hoping to draw in a significant new audience for the cars, for the drivers, for the racing. They don't have that stored memory. And as long as we've got 5-6 cars barreling into turn one at Le Mans side by side, not just on lap 1, but lap 2 and lap 102 and lap 302, they're not going to give us stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's in the many downsides of balance of performance. The upside is you should, if you do it properly, be able to sustain a level of competition and variety that we've not been able to sustain in classes that have not had that. GT3 is the ideal example of exactly that.
Yeah.
Okay. What has been a pretty well managed process. They've not so much managed to manage the cost escalation as well as they might have done, but I think they're beginning to wake up to that again. But if we end up in, let's say, 4 years' time, we've still got, say, 5-6 manufacturers racing for the overall at every World Championship race, at every IMSA race, and particularly at Daytona and the Le Mans 24 Hours, I don't think we can have any complaints.
Yeah.
But whenever that comes back again, that the cars are so slow. Oh, like Ligonhouse is terrible. They're having to balance everything down to the slowest car. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they are, because that's what balance of performance means.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you would like the example of what the cars were balanced around, the cars were balanced around a GT3 to start with, effectively a Porsche Cup car. That was the reference car. Okay. Was what GT3 used to be.
Yeah.
It was a Porsche Cup car. Look at where we are now.
Yeah.
Guess what happens next? Guess what happens next?
The step back.
Smart people push the envelope.
Yeah.
They push that envelope. And, again, looking back at the last 20 years from DSC and looking back at the debate about cars that were struggling to make 330 at Le Mans, these were awesome cars. These were Dellaras, Pescarolos, proper LMP1 cars struggling. And for the most part, that's been changes in the circuit, grip levels on the circuit with tarmac being relayed, easing off some of the extremes for good reasons, and tyre technology,
Yeah,
which has been the massive step forward that everybody
is
misunderstands, I think.
benefiting from. Yeah.
So these cars are not slow. I would be prepared to bet right here, right now, in 2 or 3 years' time, we'll be talking about this as being a golden era of competition and not just numbers.
Awesome. I'm gonna hold you to that. I want you to rip through 3 or 4 questions really, really quickly. So
Of course,
only 2 or 3 sentences you're allowed this time on each.
fair enough.
We talked about GT Pro. Yes, the idea of GT3 being Pro-Am in ACO competition. A few questions from that. Michael Baranowski asking, IMSA's marching on with GTD-Pro, and that seems to be going well, whereas ACO seems to be committed to a a GTM sort of like a GTM extension sort of thing. What's your view on that? IMSA deciding to create GTD-Pro while WC seems more focused on AMGT racing. Is there a specific reason for the WC's decision? Comes from Accurate Soup? Just 3 or 4 sentences. What's your read on the sort of difference in philosophy between the IMSA GT Pro and the ACO's GT3 AM formula?
I think WC ACO are keen on pushing the Hypercar project as hard as they can, as soon as they can. Yeah. They always have the opportunity, remember, to change their mind in 2 or 3 years, depending on the way things go. But I think if you look at what we've seen, AsLMS is a great example of it. Look at the numbers there. If actually you can fill your grid with high quality teams, with high quality cars and high quality drivers, and more particularly from the ACO's point of view, those brands that would be bringing activation to their race meetings, I can't say that they're making a mistake. It also, by the way, does give sustainability to the professional teams. Do I mourn the end of GT Pro and the Pro? Yeah, I do. I think it's really sad. I sort of think it probably could be back at some point. But let's start thinking, not in terms of a year or 2 years. Pierre Fion's made it clear, if 4 cars commit to a full season, they'll consider it. They're not going to.
Yeah.
They're not going to principally because this has been driven, this decision, by Porsche and Ferrari, who provide the vast majority of the cars that would be available. I think if a group of manufacturers came back in a year or 2 or 3 or 4 years' time and said, you know what, can we talk about a change? That would be seen positively if those manufacturers do what they need to do, which is to back up their idea with cold hard cash. You need to see that fan outreach, which we don't have at WC race meetings. You do have it at IMSA race meetings, which is, by the way, where there's a difference.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is a difference in terms of the way in which those manufacturers are viewed and are activated by the 2 championships. You go to an IMSA race meeting, there is a vendor row. There are 3 or 4 of those manufacturers with things they are showing off. That doesn't happen for the most part at hardly any of the WEC races. And that, to my mind, is an error that I think they're going to be trying to correct.
Long 3 sentences there. I'll rein you back in for next time. Another question. We mentioned Audi. Hieronymus asks, with Audi dropping out early from their LMDH program, do you think the legendary 4 rings to rule them all could eventually make a comeback? Is that something that you see on the cards?
It's possible. It's possible. Who knows? I mean, if we'd have been talking about this 8-9 months ago, we'd all have gone, no, of course they'll be back. It's going to be glorious. Christ knows what's going on there. We know it's involving Formula One. We know it's involving industrial costs at the moment across the whole thing.
So I've just been slipped a note here from a lot of safety car in our live chat. Volkswagen Group CEO Herbert Diess says Porsche and Audi have decided to enter F1 in 2026, approximately when we started this podcast. So with that now in mind...
Well, that's not a surprise. I mean, it is a matter of, we know that both parties have been talking to multiple people. All saw the story that was then denied about McLaren and Audi. There's been stuff to do with Williams. There's been stuff to do with Sauber, blah, blah, blah. I mean, my view is I'm not going to be distracted by any of that. If I want to go to Formula One, delighted for them. Have great fun. I won't be watching it, is the honest answer. bores the living daylights out of me at the moment. It just does. And I've frankly not got time. What does that mean that they can't come back? It doesn't mean that they can't come back. Right now, they're definitely not coming. But here's the thing. They've got a design. They've got a car. They could do it if they chose to do it, but it's likely to be a customer-based program. That's the most likely avenue for them to come.
Yeah.
I don't see it anytime soon, particularly if they're distracted by trying to rack up the multi-millions of euros to get into F1. And that's a massive issue for them at the moment with the state of the global economy. So the answer is sadly no. I don't see that happening, and I do think that's a mistake.
Yeah, fair enough. Especially for the modern endurance fan, Audi and Le Mans kind of go a bit like that.
I think it's a mistake.
Yeah.
I think that's what they're doing at the moment is fundamentally off-brand, and I think they have an opportunity to tell a better story by doing whatever it is they're going to do, and this.
Yeah.
I'm not party to the numbers, but everything I understand about the numbers is the numbers we'd be talking about for LMDH are peanuts compared to the other alternatives.
Yeah, fair enough. We were talking about balanced performance. A question from Representative Sock83. Will we ever have a top class without BOP again, or is this how Le Mans is going to go for the next decade?
Never say never. I mean, the EV route could be interesting, but I don't think we're going to see the point of cost escalation that we saw through LMP1 hybrid for an awfully long time. It's simply not sustainable.
Yeah.
And particularly when you have to look forward to where is the next big challenge coming, it without a shadow of a doubt is climate change. That is the gorilla in the room. Okay. So that's the opportunity for a truly technology-led response. Is anybody brave enough to open that Pandora's box to there being no cost cap, no balance performance? I just don't see it. I just think we're in a different world. And you know what? We're correct to be in a different world. You've got to look at the realities of science. You've got to look at the realities of the economic forces behind that. I don't see any appetite at all industrially for an open rule book anymore. And here's the thing, guys. You can be pleased that we saw the last era of that for the time being.
Okay. That's kind of sad to hear because the LMP1 era was bonkers crazy. Yeah. But
awesome.
Yeah.
I could be rocking in my chair and telling my grandchildren, I was there, son. Yeah. Me and that John Hindhaugh screaming our heads off. All the bonkersness. I mean, that it's to be regretted it's gone, but it's gone. But then think about some of the other eras that we see through kind of rose-tinted spectacles. Group C, amazing golden era that undoubtedly was, evolved through a number of iterations, including one that was really heavily restricted in terms of fuel efficiency. Yeah. People forget that. What they look at is these beautiful cars and think life was better in those days. Well, it was in some ways, but not in others.
Yeah, absolutely. And
excuse me.
The ever progressing, power of technology will mean that we're going to keep moving in different directions. That we don't know what's coming next.
We don't.
That's kind of awesome.
It is. I mean, just enjoy the fact you've got really clever people prepared to deciding that what they want to do with that cleverness is to focus on something this pointless.
I like it. Let's move away from racing and hardcore, what's going to happen in the future. Let's go through some questions about your experience in broadcasting and in watching motorsport. And the first question I've got here is from James Racing Geek. How different is the challenge of being the lead commentator on the Asian Le Mans Series broadcast versus being the lead analyst, as you so very delicately put it, on WEC and ELMS? Is that a big difference in how you have to sort of prepare for those weeks?
Not in terms of preparation. I turn up prepared because I do this for a living.
Yeah,
so it's not,
absolutely.
I don't cram, if you like. So in terms of the physical act of doing the job, lead is a lot more challenging because there's a lot more going on. So My job is to describe to you, the watching viewers or the listening listeners, rather, what it is you're seeing or hearing. And if I don't do that, then I've dropped the ball. Whereas analyst is pretty simple by comparison. As I said before on a couple of these podcasts, there's a lot of things going on in my ear. Producer, they might be asking me, what do we need to look at next? I need to then find a pause to talk back to him so that you don't hear it, to say, find the 53 Ferrari, they're catching the 24 Lamborghini.
Yeah.
That goes on. I've got possibly, but not so much in the Age of Le Mans series, someone talking into my ear from the pit lane saying that they've got somebody with them. Can we put them to air there, or do we wait for a camera, etc., etc.? And then beyond that, you get things like, we do have systems failures. We had it at Paul Ricard, where our brand new
timing laptop
strategy setup fell over with 40 minutes of the race to go, just the very worst time. So the answer is, in terms of preparation, I'm lucky because I do this for a living and I don't do anything else. Okay, so I only do sports car racing. I've got some other bits and bobs that I do professionally away from racing here in this office, but that's it. So I don't have to do what a lot of people have to do, which is to learn a lot in a short period of time, because I should know it.
Yeah.
Okay? The challenge, I would say this, it's mentally very taxing. And you realize that when you're finished and you realize how tired you are. Putting on a headset like this is my happy place. I love doing it. I love going into that booth, picking up the headset, plugging in, switching on, talking to colleagues, being ready to go, and then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, live. I love it more than words can say. It's a straight and honest answer. I'm privileged to be able to do it. I'm grateful for those that have allowed me to do it and continue to allow me to do it. And what it does do is it does make me possibly a little more demanding of the quality of what you're presented with, both from our broadcasts, because we're always pushing to do more and better, and from other broadcasts. And that's why when Marshall gets stuck in on the Eurosport side of things, I can't agree or disagree with him because I haven't heard it.
Yeah.
But I absolutely agree with the principle, which is, if you've turned up to the biggest race of the year and you weren't prepared, that's not on.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not on. Okay? You can't be making basic errors about the cars, the racing, the classes. The drivers are perhaps a little more challenging when you scrape below the first two veneer levels of professionalism. But the reality is, you're an audience, and for the most part, you're paying to watch this. That needs to be treated with more respect. So it's not a finger being pointed at any individual. It's a general principle that treat this as seriously as you would any other job. You do that, if you turn up prepared and you've got a good team around you and the technicals work fine, then people should be informed and entertained. That's the way I do it.
When you're commentating on the WEC, do you respond to Haven saying something and think, I would have described that differently? Or is that just something that doesn't brush into your mind when you're doing that sort of stuff for the WEC?
Martin is just awesome. He is, one thing I'll say about Martin is he is just a lovely, lovely man.
Yeah.
Okay. Does he make mistakes? We all make mistakes. Part of my job is to correct the obvious ones and to do it in such a way that it doesn't come across like a chiding parent.
Not like Alan McNish.
But Alan was what a genuine privilege to stand alongside him for several years and trade blows with him, if you like, at times.
Yeah.
Ant Davidson is a fundamentally different character. Another lovely guy. I think he's going to be awesome at this. I think he's going to be great. We had real fun at what was quite a challenging race meeting at Sebring. They just slotted in really beautifully. So the answer in terms of correcting people is be gentle. He doesn't mean to make an error, or he might have misidentified. And, we've never fallen out. Not ever once I've fallen out in the years that I've been working with Martin. We've never fallen out about anything he said or I've said. We might have a conversation about, I've done that a bit differently.
Yeah.
We're grown-ups. We understand that it's the here and now and it's live. and we know there are lines you do not cross. And I think that's the key to it is we're not the show.
Yeah.
Okay? You're seeing is the show. And we're just looking to try to make it better and more entertaining and not shout. You don't have to shout. Sometimes it's, oh my God.
Yeah.
If you do that, I was watching a couple of races over the weekend. It's kind of, you kind of think, stop shouting. Stop shouting. I'll be blunt. A little bit of this, and this is going to be highly controversial.
Okay.
It's not everybody. It's come a little bit back from the sim racing community, where it's people do get a bit shouty. It doesn't need shoutiness. If that's a style that people like, good luck to you. I don't. What I'm looking for, I don't want somebody to be calm and collected. I want a bit of elevation to it, but I don't need this all the time because that's too much. What you can do is say, that's a great move. It's got him up the inside. Away he goes, Graham. It's the wrong Carl Martin. You know, but it's,
yeah.
Tone and not volume, because it's a 12-lap race. Volume can work for a 12-lap race. Try that over 4 hours, and people can turn you down.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very, very good point that you've made, and I've got you talk about sim racing. I've got a little bit of sim racing commentary experience. Something that a few people that I've got involved with do is they do a full length Bathurst 1000, and as part of that as well, Stairs, my mate Alistair, who puts it together, he's got an incredible setup where he's got 3 computers running just the broadcast. And we have like an external camera as well where we can do like stuff in front of whiteboard, and it's fantastic. But all of that stuff is to service the racing. And yeah, as you said, if you try and be shouty for 6 hours from a Bathurst 1000, it doesn't happen.
Shouty in extremis is fine. Shouty as a style, just no.
It's a bit harder.
It's tiring. It's actually what it is. It's like, let's put it this way: if in your life you have a friend or a relative or a partner that shouts all the time, it's not going to last very long, is it?
That just sounds like lunch at Nonna's for me, Graham. Sorry.
Fair enough. But there you go. That's my view. I love what I do. I'm very lucky that I work with people that I like, all of them. There's not a person that I work with in broadcasting that I don't really like. Ollie Gavin is awesome. Absolutely love him to pieces. Ant Davidson, I think, is going to be a fantastic fit. I've known Ant, of course, already, but to work with him more directly is very different. The same with Martin. Johnny Palmer for the LMS. I just love working with all of them, and long may that continue. I
am very, very jealous that you get to work in an environment where you love everyone that you work with, because that's very rare, and you're very lucky. I've got to do this one. This is a Reddit classic. Would you rather fight 100 Rosie and Rocky sized Marshall Pruitts? I assume Rosie and Rocky, the chicken far, or one Marshall Pruitt sized Rocky.
Cats.
Oh, there's cats. Oh, sorry. Okay. 100 Rosie and Rocky sized Marshall Pruitts, or one Marshall Pruitt sized Rocky. This comes from the Wawa 24. This is a Reddit classic.
Hang on. We've got a guest coming in.
We got a guest. Okay. Well, then I'll ask the next question next.
Here you go.
Yeah. Is he going to come on?
He is. There he is. He's just here. There he is.
There he is.
There's Oscar.
And Trudy in the background. Hello, Trudy.
Hello, Trudy. Say hello, Trudy.
Hi.
This is a live podcast.
All right.
Okay. Trudy just delivered my lunch and Oscar's lunch with it, and as you'll see, Oscar will become part of the broadcast from here on in. So there he is.
Okay. We'll leave the question about Marshall Pruitt and his cats.
I'll tell you the Rocky and Rosie bit. The thought of wrestling a Marshall Pruitt-sized cat. That's a deadly beast, and actually, a Marshall wouldn't mind me saying so. That's too big to deal with. So it would be the former rather than the latter.
The 100 Rosie and Rocky sized Marshall Pruitts?
Actually, while I just feed my dog some banana.
No problems. Well, the next question we have is from Mark Clarkson, MW Clarkson. What's the best breed of dog, and why is it a husky?
It's a husky.
But why?
It's husky because he's such a beautiful boy.
Oh, look at him.
No, he's awesome. I mean, those that don't know our history with this, Oscar joined us about 2.5 years ago, just about 6 months before lockdown, and he is now a 5.5-year-old Siberian Husky, about 32 kilos. He is just a food-motivated bundle of awesomeness. Out all morning walking with Trudy, and he's now back. And the next little fixed point in his day is
that piece of banana. Is he gonna get
this
it?
piece of banana.
Is he gonna get it? Is he gonna get it?
Gently.
Yeah, beautiful.
It doesn't snap. He's just ace. So, my first ever dog, by the way.
I was going to say you've got a DSC cat. You mentioned quite a fair
DSC
bit.
cat, a DSC cat stunt double. So DSC cat, whose actual name is Tango. Guess what colour she is? And we've had Tango now for, we think, about 15 and a half years. So we've had her since she was 8 weeks old.
Wow.
We used to have her mum as well. Sadly passed away. And then some years later, we got Bear. Bear is a similarly ginger and white, overly aggressive male cat. There you go, a little bit of crab stick for the boy now. But this is his routine. This is what happens every lunchtime here in the office.
Fantastic.
Stressful.
So are you more of a cat person or a dog person? I'm just going to quickly move the Discord. Both?
Both. I think they've got their places. He's a great companion. And he's an awesome boy. He wasn't very well treated by his first owners, so he can be a bit scared of some people, and clearly has taken a beating at some point. So you can't in any way. You've got to be kind. You've got to be kind of calm with him. Doesn't like if anything gets noisy. Doesn't like crowds. Doesn't like going into shops. Doesn't like any of that. But other than that, he's just such a kind boy. He's just lovely. He, as with a lot of animals, they can sense what's going on, and if someone's a bit sad, you'll tend to find him sitting next to them, which is just some. It's either that or they've got a plate of sandwiches.
It could be either or, really.
Probably both. If you're sad, get a plate of sandwiches. You won't be without the very long anyway.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. A few more questions about just broadcasting and just general motorsport stuff.
Yeah.
One thing that we've gotten here from Bonnie Lass 47, someone that
hello.
Yes,
I
someone.
remember Bonnie Lass 47. Yes.
She asks, as a British motorsport journalist, I'd like your perspective on what you find the most and least endearing about the fans that you encounter around the world and around different parts of the world. So she goes to say, what do you find particularly interesting about people in North and South America, or in Asia, or in Australia? Or in Africa? Have you done any race events in Africa?
Nothing. I've never been to Africa. Never been to Killarney. Remember, we were supposed to go for WEC just before COVID.
Yes.
Australians are the worst.
I know, right?
Look, almost all motorsport fans that I encounter are fantastic, enthusiastic, pretty knowledgeable, inquisitive, respectful of kind of distance, and sometimes have to be persuaded to go and do things that they're allowed to do. When they're in groups, when they're hunting as a pack, that if anything, I think is even more awesome. The ones not fans, the people who go and nick stuff from race circuits, they're not fans. They're just going to nick stuff from race circuits. Anybody that will describe themselves as an enthusiast or a fan of anything, that's got to be a positive part of life and society, hasn't it? And if part of that is that they know a lot and want that endorsed and want that kind of, that's fine. And if part of that is they've got questions, delighted. If I've got 10 minutes, my happy place is certainly to stand and talk to someone and say, give them the answer about what do you think about that. Of course it is. That's human discourse. Life is full of conversations, and that's the way it should be. So around the world, there's not a huge amount of difference. The big differences come with the amount of access you're permitted to have.
Okay.
And our friends at IMSA are very lucky if they get a lot more access, because there generally aren't garages. There's a couple of exceptions. For goodness sake, is one. There generally aren't garages. The general rule of thumb is that it's kind of open awning, so you can get at least two sides and watch what's going on with the cars. The teams generally have woken up to the fact that actually does make life, for the most part, pretty positive. So they'll go along with that aspect of life as well. And then I think we're now coming into a moment where I hope we're going to see something really positive, which is Spa will see the paddock open to fans for the first time since pre-pandemic times in WEC. We saw that over the weekend at Brands Hatch with GT World Challenge Europe powered by Valentino Rossi. And the reality, I think, is people have been hungry for it. I think they're going to show their awesomeness in terms of the way they respond to that. I'm hoping we're going to have a party atmosphere of the nicest sort at Le Mans this year, in that people, I think, are going to be coming back and enjoying something that I know a lot of them have missed for too damn long. But not a huge amount of difference. It's an odd thing from my perspective that people don't tend to recognize me. They'll tend to recognize my voice.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it is there's one kind of amusing aside, which is that on occasion, be standing in a group of people having a conversation, there's this kind of meerkat-like response, kind of, squirrel. So it's not a squirrel. Okay. But it's that. That's nice. I like that. I like the fact that people like what I do. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But I think you've just got to approach it again that with openness and with kindness and being generous with your time if you've got it. And if someone's got a question and that enhances their day, or someone can be introduced to someone and that enhances their day, then that's got to be a good thing. And I'm hoping. I think I've said to you and said to a few people, I'll be at 2 or 3 of the IMSA races this year in a completely different role for myself as a team member for a couple of races. And there will be a couple of people on the Discord server that have reached out and said, I'm going to be there. I will be reaching out and we will do some awesome stuff.
Awesome.
There are going to be opportunities to see some things you otherwise wouldn't have seen. And that's something I think more of us could do to give more of an experience to more people in the sport that everybody's passionate about.
Absolutely. And on the note of getting the look sort of behind the curtain, I'll always remember getting that sort of pit walk and that guided pit paddock view of the AsLMS series at the Bend that you so generously did for not only me but a group of us. It was really, really good. And being able to sit with but have that representative from Ligier. I've forgotten his name, but he was talking about
Christoph.
Yeah, Christoph, where we were talking about the entire carbon fiber development side of the entire company and how that all works and how he was there to service all of these teams as the representative. Like that's the sort of stuff that you don't read or see in a race.
But here's the point: neither is that difficult. I mean, I know. Years back, when Delhi Sports Car had a fair amount of backing for a couple of 3 years from Nissan up until 2015, and they pressed the bonkers button.
Yeah.
And we were close at that point to starting a thing, Fan Friday, at WEC race meetings, where there'd be some kind of staged event that fans would be able to come in for the evening, and there'd be food stalls open, and there'd be free entertainment, and that would be effectively, an opportunity for interaction with significant people for the championship on stage in the circuit, with maybe an open pit lane to go along with that. And if people were there and you could get an autograph or two, then great. If they weren't, you could go and still go and look at the cars in relative. I think, again, that's something that would be a really good thing for them to look at again as we kind of push forward into what's going to be a very different era. I never stop trying to get people to think in those kind of terms, because the most undervalued asset that most sporting offerings have is their existing fan base. Everybody's really hungry. I mean, you'll get bored of hearing it, but Drive to Survive, blah blah blah. Because people have seen that doing something has opened the doors to a brand new audience, not entirely positive in some cases, but let's be kind. Don't forget the people you've already got.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones who've sustained you to this point. And if what that means is you're offering something in your product that says we're encouraging more people to come, but that we also need to encourage
The people who've already
the
been
people
coming.
we've got to bring people with them.
Yeah,
Why wouldn't you do something on a Friday night?
absolutely.
Why wouldn't you do that? If to be blunt, Michael, if they said to me and they said to a couple of the other guys, we're thinking of doing this, can you give a couple of hours on Friday? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that sounds like fun. Can I have a beer? Yes, you can.
Brilliant.
Will give me a free burger at the end of it, so I don't have to worry about what I'm going to get fed tonight? Then yes, I'll happily stand there with a microphone and MC something with whether it's 40 or 40,000 people to get questions going to, I don't know, Oliver Jarvis, maybe Kobayashi, you name it. I'd love to do that.
On the note of Kobayashi, I'm glad that you brought it up. There was one question that was really interesting about his role at Toyota now. I do want to round back to the fan stuff because we've got a bunch of questions about that. But seeing as you mentioned Kobayashi, a Saw Passer has asked, I'll just read out everything that he's written here.
Yeah.
I wonder if a newly appointed team principal Kobayashi, is he a puppet for Toyota's, sort of like the Queen of England is a puppet for like a figurehead for someone else making the decisions, or is he the one really in control of the race team at the track? So is he a figurehead sort of position as a driver and a team principal, or is there direct control that he has at the track in those two positions?
He is the team principal.
He's the team principal. So
that's it.
So he's the one running the show at the track.
Ultimately, they're going to be kind of walls that they're not going to tell us about.
Yeah.
Make no mistake. I had this conversation with Anthony Davidson, and Anthony came in and goes, "He really is in charge." I'll give you, for instance, when they arrived at Sebring, and they got at Sebring, we have these kind of semi-permanent tents.
Yeah.
Kind of quite big, and the pit setup is there, in those tents. And apparently, from what I gather, Kamui turned up, didn't like the way it was set up, wanted some more branding. They had to go and get some more branding. If I explain to you the principal reason he is effectively Toyota-san's eyes and ears at that race meeting.
Okay, yeah.
So he has got a direct line to the head of Toyota. Okay, who, if you don't know, he is absolutely motorsport nuts. Raced for many years at the Nürburgring 24 Hours. No, Kamui, it's not a ceremonial position. He has some responsibilities. What I don't know, but I think we can probably guess, is whether or not that goes as far down as dealing with any kind of team orders and race strategy. My guess is not. But did Jose Maria Lopez have to have a meeting without coffee and biscuits with Kamui? I think he did.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah, because at
the answer is no. He really is the team principal.
Yeah, well, there you go. So that's we had a few people asking that in the chat. So there we go. That question has now been settled. A follow-up question: does Kamui negotiate his driving contract with himself as the team principal?
Yeah, that's why he keeps turning up in there for bigger cars.
Talking back to the fan side of things, I've got a question from Mark Clarkson again. He says, outside of Le Mans, which country or venue or circuit or series or event has the best fan atmosphere? You've been to quite a few events around the world, quite a few big events around the world. Which one do you look forward to most for the fan atmosphere of it all?
The fan atmosphere. I love WEC races at Fuji. They're great. Bathurst 12 Hour is great. IMSA races are usually really awesome. All of those, without a shadow of a doubt, they're the ones that stand out in terms of the fan interaction. Trying to think of a good example. They're all very different. Sebring wasn't quite back to what it normally was. I think people were avoiding that clamour of people, but Sebring has always been a massive favourite. It was less so this year, and I can't really put my finger on why, because there was a big crowd there.
Just quickly, while you mentioned Sebring, Austin Zetzman, Cookie Monster FL, for those listening along, he was talking about his experience at Sebring when he was there for the 12 hour. He mentioned that he managed to sneak his way into the IMSA paddock area, not the paddock area, the catered swanky section, because apparently they were just throwing out passes, and he just went dumpster diving and found a bunch of passes, and Snuck its way
Fair
in.
enough. Well, at the end of the day, people are. It's at the end of the day. Again, it comes down to what do you do with your access.
Yeah.
If what you do with your access enhance your experience and don't do any harm and don't put anybody at risk, no problem.
Yeah.
No problem at all.
It was pretty funny that he was telling that story, yeah. But yeah, no, Sebring seems like a real proper party atmosphere.
Sebring is it is a world class event. That's why people love Le Mans. It's a world class event. There are aspects of the Le Mans experience, a huge favourite of, when I was still working with John at Radio Le Mans, we had the Friday morning pit lane show, which you can't have anymore because cars on track.
Oh yeah,
one of my favourite things to do, and that was 2 or 3 of us. It was generally John and myself, and on a couple of occasions we had Sam Collins as well. And effectively, what we would do was to leapfrog, 2 mic packs, on live with someone we picked out of a garage somewhere, the other one going to find the next guest. None of it set up, all very live. It was kind of 2.5 hours. Just awesome fun.
That would be sick.
Bring what you'd like to do as a fan. There's Guy Smith. There's Mikkel Jensen. There's Rene Rast. Let's go and have a chat with them. Let's go and have a chat with Dan Binks up at Corvette. Let's go and take the piss out of, let's do that. So that was real freeform broadcasting, and that's great fun. The other thing I hope we can get back to when things even out is the kind of Friday night campsite tours.
Yeah.
And getting the opportunity there to do a little bit of broadcasting, but also to sit down with a beer and talk to people while they're having, for many of them, their big motorsport trip of the year. That's just awesome. And if they see me being there, or Martin or John or Anthony being there as a positive, why is that a bad thing? And sometimes they buy you a beer.
What I'm hearing from this is you'll do basically anything for a free beer.
Anything for beer.
Yeah, okay.
Beer and a burger. Anything.
Anything. So, but for some reason, I've seen pictures of this. For some reason, when you come to Australia, VB is your beer of choice. What's up with that?
Yeah. I just do that just to annoy them.
Very.
No, seriously, if in doubt, assume that I'm doing it just to annoy them.
Just to annoy? Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
I have that rule as well with our next question, which is going to be a bit of a fun one. With Kiwi Chris 1709. Have you've definitely come across Kiwi Chris. He asked, somewhat antagonizingly to me, if you could pick the 3 best Australian drivers from sports cars and the 3 best New Zealand drivers, who would win in an identical car? That's what he's asking.
Aren't they the same thing? Isn't that just like your Wales?
Yeah, pretty. They're just New Zealand's just lucky that we don't invade them yet.
Good luck with that. The sharks up there,
There's sharks in Australia too.
3 Aussie drivers. I'm going to go for Van Gisbergen because I think he's just special.
He is, in fact, a Kiwi.
For the New Zealand drivers, I'm going to go for Van Gisbergen because he's quite special.
We just had a picture. We just had a picture prop up in the live chat. This Discord has worked 0 days without an international incident. Yes, ironic that our current. As
we often say as a group at Denny Sports Car to our friend Andrew Hall,
yes.
Get your stars off our flag. So Shane, Earl,
Brendan Hartley.
Yes.
Yep.
For the Aussies,
there's not too many now that you think about it.
Sports. Well, oddly enough, one of the things I was doing, I'm trying to get in touch with our learned friend, Australian sport journalist and author, David Greedhouse, who some years ago did a story about the Bathurst book, which is fantastic. Wrote a story about all the Australian drivers that ever raced at Le Mans, and there weren't many at that point. In fact, that's accelerated pretty darn rapidly since then. So who would it be?
I can think of 2 names immediately. The first 2 that come to mind are Matt Campbell, in factory Porsche driver, and James Allen, who's been tearing things up in LMP2. That stint that he had at Graf, not last year but 2020, until he unfortunately put it in the wall. They'd be my 2. But the problem is, where's the third?
I sat down with James to talk about that.
Yeah.
was at the end of last year. We sat down and we had a conversation. And he was there kicking himself. I said, look, at the end of the day, if you've not listened to the broadcast, you need to go back and listen to the broadcast. And you need to hear what your opposition was saying.
Yeah.
Because I think you put a smile on your face. I can't remember, was it René Rast or was it Paul de Resta?
I think it was Felipe Albuquerque was the name that sticks out to me.
Right,
yeah.
Saying, how's you this fast? But that's some statement. Beyond that, let's have a think.
The only other one I can see on the Le Mans
talking about current races.
The only one I can think of is Ryan Briscoe, but is he Australian still, or is he now entirely naturalized American?
We just have to call him American now and just move on. It's like David Brabham, really. It's when he was raced for Bentley. That's it. Wore a British flag there. I've never let him forget that. Never, ever. I think the answer is this. It's a bit like the Japanese scene. And hopefully COVID hasn't spoiled this for us. We just got to the stage where the international scene was opening up and allowing these strong national motorsport scenes to internationalize themselves. Thing is, with Japan and with Australia, they've got very strong national scenes, and the logistics are that it's actually difficult to get there and to get out of there. Significantly more difficult for the last 2 years, but and also that the way the calendars worked was not kind to doing more than just a domestic championship.
Yeah.
I hope that we'll see Shane van Gisbergen show what he's got at Le Mans this year. Yeah. If the car they're going to have underneath him is what it should be, Nick Cassidy, by the way.
Yeah,
I think Nick's awesome.
Yeah, that was the fourth name on my list of New Zealanders.
Yeah. So I think the answer is New Zealand would kick your ass without shadow of a doubt.
Yeah,
without shadow of a doubt. But I hope we can get back to the point where some of these guys have the opportunities that their talents deserve on a world stage. It may just be that they decide that's not what they want. Really?
Well, it's been interesting. Of course, in Australia specifically, the focus is so much on the supercars. But as you made mention, towards the end of the decade, we were seeing guys do well at the Bathurst 12-hour, like Shane van Gisbergen, like Scott McLaughlin, like Chaz Mostert, get picked up and then put into these other programs.
Chaz, by the way, is a great call. Chaz, I think Chaz turned some heads. And it's not easy when you get into a different car in different circuits with different rules. But that's a guy who's quick everywhere.
Yeah,
I think he's awesome.
He was my first big feature for DSC, if you remember that.
I do. Lounsey, I think, missed the boat. I think had this all happened 3, 4, 5 years earlier, I think Greg Lowndes would have been an international superstar. I genuinely do. I think he is a star. He's not got the international profile that his talents deserved. And his talents out of the car. He came and did the Spa 24 and was just so generous with time and comment. I remember Stephen Kilby at the time saying an instant fan of just the way he went about things. So, I feel we've missed the boat a little bit, quite literally. I hope we'll manage to get international sports car racing back down under as soon as we can, but I don't genuinely see it being the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Really, that's quite a shame. Of course, the Bathurst 12 hours coming up very shortly. I've had a look at
that aside. That will get back to its glory days. I've zero doubt in 23.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
I think we're gonna have to just accept that 22 will be somewhat more downbeat.
Yeah.
But 23, I hope it gets back to it because, you shouldn't underestimate. Put aside the fan side of things, teams and in particular the drivers want to do that race.
Yeah. I remember the first time I talked to, I think it was Augusto Farfus when he came to Bathurst. I asked him what he thought of the track, and he said, "Excuse the language, everyone." He said it was fucking incredible, and that was his first. It was his first time out. And he said it's right up there with the Nordschleife. I feel like I'm going to crash every single corner. I'm like, man, that sounds awesome.
There you go. There's that. I remember Ollie Jarvis in an interview we did with him before he signed for Bentley. He signed for Bentley to do that.
To do Bathurst, yeah.
Yeah, that's what he did. And that's what I want in my racing drivers. I want a degree of enthusiasm. I have to be careful there, by the way, because he's aware that there's still sandwiches on the plate.
Okay, I'm gonna.
While there's still sandwiches on the plate, he won't take things from a plate. But I've just got to be a little bit wary. But no, I mean that's what I want. I want them to be hungry for experience and not just titles and championships.
Yeah, so you're saying at the end of all that, you're saying New Zealand will kick our ass?
Mate. Yeah. You just want to be on the same line. Nowhere there.
Oof. That hurts. That hurts. Just quickly on Lounsey, now that you remember, that you remind me, did you know that he raced in the Helmut Marko Young Driver Program in Formula 3 back in 1990?
I've got a feeling. I've got a feeling. Did he also race single seaters in the UK? Because I've got a feeling I saw him in his junior Formula days.
Quite possibly. Do you remember? Do you know who his teammate would have been in that era, in the late 90s, in the Helmut Marko Young Driver Program?
Go on.
One Pablo Montoya.
Was it?
Absolutely. He cites Montoya specifically as the reason he never made it in Europe, because he just could not deal with Montoya as a teammate.
I think Lounsey, did he do Formula 3000 briefly? I'm just looking up now.
I think so.
I think he did. I'm going to go back and have a look at his career. Yeah, Supercars, blah, 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 blah.
International F3000 in 1997 is the information I've been given.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. I'm looking back now. I'm trying to think where I would have seen him drive back in those days. You're right, he did 3 races. RSM Marko.
Yep, that's the one. RSM Marko with one Pablo Montoya.
There you go. So it was it just 1 year? And then it goes back into, oh my God.
Because he was the V8 Supercars. He may not have been a champion, but he just won Bathurst the year that he went over.
Yeah.
And so he came back for Bathurst in 97 and like crashed the car out. And then, and then was like, what am I doing with my life? Europe's hard. I'm going to come back to Australia. And that, well, you know, in more words than that, basically.
Lounsey, it's for me, is the epitome of what a professional race driver should be. Awesome in the car, awesome out of the car.
Yeah.
And as I say, I think had the explosion in international GT racing in particular happened a few years earlier, and I think we'd have seen a very different public profile for Craig Lowndes.
The international profile. Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, he's obviously a massive Aussie star.
Yeah, clearly, and he's a part of the Supercars broadcast now as well. So he's offers his comments there, and is still very much intimately linked with that side of things as well.
Yeah, good stuff. It's good to hear he's keeping himself gainfully employed.
Yeah,
not sitting there in a rocking chair drinking cocoa and talking about the old days.
Not yet. A few more questions. We've been going now for just on about an hour and 40 minutes. So I've got a few sort of longer form discussions that I've wanted to put out. The first one comes from NCM Jasper. He asks, how have you experienced the progress in women in motorsport over the 20 years that you've been doing Daily Sports Car? What do you think the future holds for programs like the Iron Dames and the Women in Motorsport initiative? What are your thoughts on those sort of things?
On the driving front, I think we will see more opportunities coming. There are 2 major issues that in the current form of sports car racing are challenges. The main one, it's actually from a conversation with the guys and the girls behind the Iron Dames program that they were explaining to me, which is there's a shortage of bronze drivers for a particular reason. And the reason for that is you think about the age profile of a bronze driver, a funding bronze driver. It tends to be someone late 30s through to early 50s, who's not often been involved in motorsport, maybe have come back to it, etc., etc. The reason why that's not the case with most women is because there is a simple family side to it. They do tend at some particular point to decide whether or not to go off and have a family. And that's not very fair, but it is a real reason. So that I know is an active search criteria, if you like, and I've put them in touch with a couple of people out there. I was hoping we could. There's a British lady driver. I was hoping we might be able to involve them with at an international level. That's not happened so far, but I won't stop trying. I think the thing that people miss is there has been a massive change in motorsport. Forget the drivers for a moment. Behind the scenes, I think Jane Rose, she was listening to this, would tell me I'm wrong, but I think it was 40 to 50% of the team managers of the Asian Le Mans series this year were women.
That's incredible, and
which is amazing. There's barely a team without a female member of staff on the technical and engineering side now. There are girls that are actually out there fueling, changing tyres on the international scene, race engineering, strategy, mechanics, and it's not one or two anymore. Okay, some familiar faces that I've seen kind of making their way up through the ranks, but there are others that are kind of coming in as highly skilled, enthusiastic young women coming in and kicking ass in that garage in the same way the guys do. That to me is a source of absolute joy. We've got a lot of people to thank for that. The profile that the Audi film gave to Lena Gade, I think has been a massive push behind it. Just the end of old attitudes. It's another kind of part to it. I mean, I come from a generation, I'm one of 7 children, I have 5 sisters, okay? We were never encouraged to do anything other than fulfill our potential in what was a very working class environment. And, and I'm proud to say that all of my sisters either are or have done highly responsible, very skilled jobs in education, in healthcare, in industry, in business. And that's because of the attitude of people that we had around us, not what other people in my life have experienced, which was effectively you're going to be a secretary, a nurse, or a mother.
Yeah.
And that was it. That wasn't that long ago. So that's changed and is continuing to change. And I think the more that does change, the more you've got more women in decision-making positions, inevitably when there's a call between do we take a chance on this package or this package, and the other part of the package involves a female driver, there's far more opportunity for that to be a yes. And it is this kind of chatting to Michelle Gatting about this not so long ago, and that should say, by the way, this see if I can do this. So he's now resting his on my arm because he knows I've still got sandwich. This kind of paradox between women want to be treated as sporting equals in this sport, but equally well have to see the opportunities that diversity and that agenda now offers to them in a marketplace.
Yeah.
So how long before we get to the stage where some of the guys are saying it's not fair? Wouldn't that be a turnaround?
Yeah, there has been comments whenever we saw. I think one that really sticks out to me was when we had the cat car. I think it was 2 seasons ago in IMSA with the Honda NSX, the Acura, which was Catherine Legg, Christina Nielsen, and I can't for the life of me. Hendricks was her last name. I can't remember her first name. Was it?
There were 2 or 3 people involved in that. The Brazilian girl drove it.
Bea Figueiredo, and then the money behind that car was.
Oh yes, yes. Can't remember.
Yeah, you can't remember either. I'm sure someone in the live chat is gonna remind us. But something that popped up a few times was why should this car be given special treatment? Why should people be interested in this car? It's just women. Well, it's like the comments trended very much in that direction to start with, and it's like, well, it is something sort of special. Like, this is novel, and ideally you'd love it not to be novel. Like, that's the end goal, right? But for now,
it's a breakthrough.
It is
that thing about it ultimately comes down to be a numbers game.
Yeah.
that the number of opportunities to get into international sports car racing are governed by the availability of entries, the availability of budget for those entries. And it's not that there are no, have been at times, no women involved by accident. There are reasons behind that, some of which are societal, some of which are economic, some of which are talent-based, without a shadow of a doubt, and some of that is because you don't get an opportunity to display your talents for the reasons we've just discussed. And anything that actually levels the playing field, and the issue here about leveling a playing field, that will happen eventually by osmosis. But sometimes you've got to go and kick the door in.
Yeah, the expression that we have in Australia a lot with women's sport in particular is you can't be what you can't see. And, you know, women's sport in Australia has such a high profile now because there's been a lot of marketing to show women and show young girls that you can have a career in sport. And so that moment for...
I've got an 18-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
Okay. Life is not easy for 18-year-old girls. It just isn't. A whole lot of reasons. It's not easy in terms of the impact that modern society, modern attitudes, social media, expectation, it's not an easy life at all. And anything that gives young women a positive series of values and expectations about their choices has got to be a good thing. Having anybody you could go and introduce a daughter to in a racing paddock they can see as a positive role model, you know, has got to be an absolutely enormous thing. And, you know, I hope long gone are the days where the only women in a racing paddock were the PR girl and the chef. You know, I hope that's gone.
Yeah.
Because there's so much more they've got to give. I'm lucky. I come from a professional background where until the end of my day job career, I worked for more women than men through that 30, 35 years.
Oh, wow.
And almost to a person, they were awesome. Awesome. Sadly, one or two of them, because I am that old, are no longer with us. But I have extremely fond memories of the lessons in life that they taught me, the kindness, generosity, etc. Truly some female values involved in that. And if we can get a little bit of that involved in motorsport, I don't see that as being a bad thing. So the answer to the question is, I think more opportunities will come. I think it's kind of interesting. I did, for the second time ever, a press conference at Port Ricard. The last time I did a press conference for an ACO rules event was Hungaroring in 2010.
Wow.
So I did the press conference. You don't want me with a microphone.
He says on a podcast with a microphone.
And Sophia Flörsch was part of that lineup. And before we went on there, I said to her, Sophia, I genuinely hope we could get to the stage very soon where we could do a press conference and I don't have to ask you a question hedged by, or rather shaped by, you're a woman in motorsport. I said, but we're not quite there yet. She said, no, you're absolutely right. I said, but here's the question. The question I asked her was, you've been part of one of these breakthrough all-female crews. You've broken through now with a podium-winning performance at Portimao last year in Algarve Pro, and you're back with that team on pace this year. And asked her that question about the journey. Of course, she went on with Bent Fiscal and they scored another second place. So back-to-back podiums for her now in the ELMS. But that's what I want to see. I want more of that. And to give you a parallel here, almost the exact same question/answer, but in a very different way was asked. Back in the early days of the Le Mans series, I think it was at Spa, with Vanina X driving for Roll Center. That year, I think they started the season with 4 podium finishes.
Wow.
4 third places in P1. And there was one guy in the press conference at Spa who clearly she'd come across before. And the question was voiced in, how can I put this, a significantly less kind and accommodating way. And Vanina, bless her, I've never forgotten this, said, at some point, you will ask me a question as a racing driver, not as a woman. we've come a long way,
Yeah.
but
Wow.
we're still not there yet. If that means that some of us have got to swallow our pride and swallow a couple of really well thought out points that we might think we've got to make to suck it up a bit and allow this process to happen, then that is a price worth paying, because there is a much better place on the other side of this debate.
Fantastic, and I 100% agree. That's really cool, and it has been really interesting and nice to see the progress of the Iron Dames and the Ricard Mille programs.
They'll win. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah,
the Iron Dames will win, and soon. My concern at the moment is how Fry appears to be slightly off her form, which is remarkable, since she was the one that's actually really injecting pace into it. So I hope Rahel is just on a bit of a low point at the moment. But oddly enough, she's the one at the moment in terms of the pace that's holding her back. Sarah Bovey as a bronze is nuts fast.
That pass that she made on, I think, who was it in the other Ferrari at that time? Was it Duncan Cameron? No, it can't have been Duncan Cameron. Huh?
Which Ferrari? Which I can't remember.
I can't remember. It was just one of the Ferraris that she just like completely bombed around the outside, and it was incredible. I'm like, oh my gosh. Anyway, enough about that.
That's what you want.
Completely different tack now.
That's what they've got to offer.
Yeah.
That's what they've got to offer.
Absolutely.
Which is, just simple racing skill, and the fact we've got something else we can hang on to it that, is a talking point. Great. I hope we have less of that moving forward. Diversity is a massively good thing. A massively good thing. And I know at Bahrain we had Alice Powell and Jamie Chadwick in the booth for a while. We had Michelle Gatting in the booth for a while as well. And, we went quite a way down the line of seeing whether or not we could get Michelle involved with the TV output for WEC this year. And unfortunately, that couldn't happen. But suffice it to say, there is a move underway right now from within for us to have more than just white, middle-aged, middle-class British people in that booth.
How do you feel about Australian people in that booth?
No chance. We need some culture still, mate. That's the problem.
We have culture. Have you ever heard of Vegemite?
In New York, you do.
Oh, what a...
Just be happy with the sporting endeavours and leave the culture to the rest of the
Well,
world.
apparently we don't have sporting endeavours now, because apparently New Zealand are beating us at the moment. So, okay, whatever.
Oh, it's a cross you've got to bear. Welcome to being English, mate.
Yeah, okay. When you put it like that, a few final questions. I think we'll go 3 more here. A question from Accurate Soup. What do you think is the future of Corvette racing at Le Mans and as a whole? Because at the moment they're using their GTE machine in the GTD class, which has been balanced down, and while running the GTE in WC competition. What happens next for Corvette?
I think it's going to be an interesting one. I'm aware of more than I can currently say.
Okay, yeah.
But you are not going to be wanting for Corvettes in international sports car racing.
Nice.
They're not.
A follow on from that, this is not the first time that you've told me that you are aware of more than you can say. And this is also,
Yes.
There has also been occasions where you've told me things that I have not been allowed to repeat.
Completely correct.
Much to my pain and suffering. On that, is that the worst part about being a motorsport journalist? All the things that you know that and you can't say, or what is the worst part? It's the best part.
It's the best part.
Causing people psychological trauma.
No, the best part is understanding context.
Yeah.
That's the way my mind works. So that when I understand the context for decision making, or for, or for a statement, or for the best part is knowing, at least having an inkling of what comes next. It's awesome to be surprised, and we often are. But the best part is that being trusted by people, not to be that guy. Okay. Not to be that guy that just goes and blunders in and screws it up for everybody else.
Yeah.
So it's that. It is that thing about, as I've often said to people who know my journey through life, which is this is not the most secret thing I've been entrusted with.
Yeah,
You know,
fair enough.
but
Yeah.
the fact that you're going to switch from that car to this car, that's not the most secret thing I've been entrusted with. I can keep my mouth shut, and I don't feel the need as soon as half an inkling of a possibility of a maybe has been put in front of me to go and pretend I've got another source and throw it at the internet. I'm not going to do that. You've heard me say these words. I'll say them out loud here. My mission in life in this sport is, if there are things I can help to happen, bring good people together with good cars and good programs and good championships and with good coverage, why is that a bad thing? And that can only be a good thing for my aspirations in business and personal terms moving forward. So none of us should really have to try terribly hard to be a good guy.
Yeah.
You know, and it's nice to know things you shouldn't know, but you've got to treat those things responsibly.
Yeah.
Really responsibly, because sometimes if you don't, there might be financial consequences. At times, people will tell you there'll be consequences, and they're talking absolute bullshit. I mean, I can remember a particular occasion at COTA with Ed Brown, who wasn't very happy at all that I broke the story that they were about to announce a Nissan DPI, and came into the press room and told me quite loudly in front of everybody else that if that damaged his deal, that I would be sued. To which the answer was, well, you're not going to be, are you? Because you've already signed the contract and it's not a factory deal, it's a customer deal. It was just being rude and silly, really. But the reality is you've got to be responsible about the way in which you deal with information like that. Yeah. And I have one absolute rule, which is I don't ever mess with drivers' careers.
Yeah.
Not ever. I won't talk about where they're going. I won't talk about, if I think their career is at risk. That is a matter between them and their employer. The wider world doesn't need to know that. Their performances will speak for themselves. So you won't read that on Daily Sports Car unless it's absolutely an extremist.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well,
Does that answer the question?
I don't know. I don't know. Even remember what the question was. I think the question was, what is the worst part about being an international motorsport journalist? Is it the travel? Is it the
last 2 years? It's been very hard, extremely expensive, very stressful indeed. Far more than anything I've done professionally outside in motorsport before. I don't mind the travel as long as it's reasonably simple. Sometimes, travel, I'm either traveling with people I like or I've got my own space, and I quite like that. It gives me a bit of thinking time. The worst part of it is it's the clashes.
Okay, yeah.
But if you think about this weekend, and I had the opportunity to go to Brands Hatch, opted not to, family reasons. But this weekend we had IMSA, International GT Open, 2 races, DTM, 2 races, GT World Challenge Europe, 2 races. All of those I've got to find time to try to keep on top of, to keep up to date with. Oh, Michelin Pilot Challenge, forgot that as well. So that's not unusual, really. I'm looking at my diary now. The biggest gap I've actually got from now until mid-October is after Spa. I'm not traveling for 3 weeks until Le Mans.
Until Le Mans,
yeah. All of that time will be spent with me prepping for the Le Mans 24 hours. All that time, and it won't be enough time. So it is that thing about self-motivating, organising, etc., and all the time, you've got a hungry husky.
He's still there. He's still there.
Still there. He does still some sandwich. All that time, he'll want to be walked and entertained and principally fed during all that time as well. So I'm not a standalone guy. I've got a family, I've got a wife, I've got responsibilities, etc., and all of that has to come into this kind of cocktail as well. And I wouldn't have any other way. But it does increase. Oh, by the way, writing books. So I've got to find time to write books as well.
Am I allowed to talk about the book that you've told me about doing?
No.
No? Okay. I want to ask. I
There's
want
one
to.
book. There is one book I'm actually writing now, and there are 3 other projects that are on the
Man,
bubble.
I want that book. The one that I can't talk about. I want it.
Well, the one I think you're talking about is the one that's not done yet. That's
Okay.
a deal that's still very much in the early stages.
I hope that happens. I hope that happens. Let's see. I've got a few more questions here, but I reckon because we've been going now for 2 hours, I reckon it's almost time to finish up. There's one last question that I have, or I've been given. Another one from James Racing Geek. Of course, you must get this question all the time. In fact, I think I've asked you this question. Do you have any advice for people who want to get into motorsport journalism? Are there degrees needed? What first step do you need to make? Where does it all sort of start?
The answer is you've got to be enthusiastic. You've got to be knowledgeable to a degree. And you've got to have a basic skill set. So if you're still in school, things like English, written English, highly important. A degree of technical ability, and I mean that in terms of, from my perspective, the ability to actually use a website, the ability to understand the principles of racing is a good thing. Oddly enough, this came up yesterday with in fact, from the family that found Oscar for us. And the lady in that family has got a colleague.
Did Oscar get running away?
Pardon?
Was Oscar a naughty boy?
No. Oscar was maltreated by his first owners, who were, and I'm not kidding, a Brazilian drugs gang.
Right.
Unfortunately, they abandoned him in a house without food or water.
So you mean initially found him? Okay.
So the people that looked after him were their next door neighbours and realised something had gone wrong and managed to get food and water in whilst they arranged to get access and get the dog out, but they couldn't keep him. But they're his effective foster family. So when we're away, he goes and stays with that family and adores them just as much as he adores us, because they've got food as well.
Yeah, of course.
So the answer is but the point was asking whether or not I could sit down and talk to a colleague of hers, in this case, about wanting to have a career in Formula One. Which my immediate answer is, all very well, you wouldn't go into any other industry, would you? And kind of think, this is my first entry into it. I'm going to go in and I'm going to go, let's go. I'm going to go and join the Metropolitan Police. I'd like to be the commissioner.
Yeah.
You've got to be realistic about what it is you're looking to achieve. It is pretty geeky, without a shadow of a doubt. You have to do something which I find is a massive generalism, for which I apologise. The current generation's not that great at, which is put aside your opinions and deal with fact.
Yeah.
Okay? I nearly every day get involved with people on the internet that talk about I hate this and I hate that. That's a huge word.
Yeah.
I hate Lewis Hamilton. Do you? Do you really?
Have you met him?
In which case, why?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that aspect of modern society. Park it, because here's the truth about motorsport. For the most part, everybody gets along. Okay. You will not find, for the most part, driver A saying they hate driver B. There are a few.
Yeah.
But it's very much the exception. They all know how tough it is to get there and how much tougher it is to stay there. And therefore, they're respectful of their peers. And if you're not coming into that environment with the same kind of attitude and outlook, you're not going to stay. So first things first, take some advice, practice. Whether or not it's to do as a journalist, write something, but don't write your opinion. I don't care about your opinion. Okay, I'm perfectly happy to have a conversation about your opinion. I'm not going to give space up on my website, which I'm proud of, to someone who's only ever done standing on one side of the fence. If it's an opinion about it from a fan's perspective, write that. Don't go for the I think we should do this. Well, why do you think we should do that? Who agrees with you? And why do you think that the people in that pit lane, all of whom are spending multi-million-dollar programs, should care what you think? Write something creative. Do that. Show me what you can do. Write a session report, write a race report, write an interview. Do that. Show me you've got something. If I've got the opportunity to bring someone to a race and give them some time, as I've done with you before now,
Yep.
and then at some point find a gig for them. And a good example of it is RJ O'Connell.
Yeah, absolutely.
So RJ, so for clarity here, RJ was introduced to me as someone who was very much Super GT obsessed, did awesome work there. He's done some stuff with us for Le Mans of the last couple of years, and RJ this year has picked up a paid gig working on the GT World Challenge America, and it's a paid professional writing gig to do that for this season, and he's doing an awesome job with it, and that will draw further opportunities with him, I'm sure, with the SRO package and likely with IMSA as well. He'd be with me at those 3 IMSA races is the current plan as well. So it's about think what it is that an editor, a publisher is looking for. Think of where the gaps are. Think of where the pinch points are. Are you at a race that they're not covering? Okay. Would it give you pleasure to point out a couple of things that you've noticed? Have you got a couple of shots in the paddock of a car that you weren't expecting or a driver you weren't expecting to see? Do that. Send them a little bit of news. Start a conversation. Good things come from conversations.
Yeah.
It's why your Discord server works. Good things come. People learn things from that. You asked me whether or not, on occasion, I've taken some inspiration or some hints. Yeah, I have, because that's the way that conversations work. And equally well, I know for certainty that a number of other members in that server have learned things because I've opened the door to some things that probably they didn't know. That's what it's all about. Start with a conversation, move that towards a transaction, and then let it happen. Simple as that. There's not hard and fast rule. If you have the opportunity to go and get education and training at a high level, take it. It is tougher now than it's ever been to get into a paid gig doing the things that we love. And the ones of us that do is because we may have a bit of talent and aptitude. We've also been lucky than a lot of that don't, that had the same things and didn't.
Yeah.
So I've been lucky. Simple as that. No way I'd get my career path if I was 21 now. No way on God's green earth. No chance that I've done a tenth of the things I've done in life. I was lucky. It just so happened I found a path where people were prepared to help me to find a way forward in things that it seemed I had some aptitude for.
Yeah. And on that note, something I know that Alan McNish says all the time is that you make your own luck. And I don't believe that. I've heard something different where luck is the intersection between preparation and opportunity. And so, like, for me, my preparation was being a sports mad fan of racing for my entire life. And then my opportunity was meeting you at Bathurst. I know for Stephen, who's actually younger than me, which is kind of scary to think about, his preparation was doing a journalism degree, right? And then
well, his entry to it was he, as a fan, as a teenager, wrote a Le Mans guide at 14, 15 years old. I was then introduced to it initially by a guy called Paul Slinger, and then Stephen effectively came sponsored by Darren Cox at Nissan for a couple of races.
Wow.
So Darren paid for him to come. And I can remember the first day we had him in a press room at Silverstone. I remember exactly what we put him through that day. And at the end of that day, he made one almighty, massive cock-up in about the first 10 minutes. I'm not going to tell you what it was, but it would be one of those moments, we all got them in life, where when he thinks about what he did and what he said, it will make him shudder to this day what he said and did.
I will have to ask him the next time that I see him in person.
You should. Ask him online, he'll tell you. But that started a conversation, and from there on in, he's an excellent example of someone who is prepared to take positive, critical appraisal and run with it. And he stopped asking me, can I write an editorial, pretty quickly. And the day when he was eventually allowed to do that was a breakthrough day for him. And that's the way it should be. Yeah. As I can remember in my government press office days, having a conversation that might reasonably have been construed to people close to me as being a row, because it was, about some guy telling me that I'd lied to him. Well, I hadn't. This, that, and the other. I said, no. You've asked me a question. I've told you the answer to that question. The fact that you don't like the answer to the question doesn't mean to say it's a lie. But here's the point. You need to stop talking to people in that tone, because you are in a privileged position of being allowed to write your opinion in a national newspaper. That's a privileged position. I'm not allowed to give you my opinion because that's not my job. Okay. So you need to back off. You need to stop describing people in those ways. And you need to understand the level of privilege that you've got about your opinion rather than fact. And bluntly, you need on occasion to be a bit more descriptive about the dividing line between the two. I'm perfectly happy to have that conversation. Is that difference between what's opinion and what's fact. And that, my friend, is one of the ills of modern journalism, is there's not a big enough dividing line between the two. So the answer is talk to people, reach out to people, ask questions, practice. You can write something. No one else ever needs to see it. If you've got a friend that you trust, if you've got a contact that you trust, ask them what they think. Ask them whether it reads well. Ask them whether they learned anything.
If you've got a community that you can share some information with, because that's basically how I started. The long guides would.
There's nothing to stop you having a group of 2 or 3 people from that server that is effectively a support group on that journey. Nothing to stop you from doing it. You've got an enclosed group of knowledgeable people who are enthused enough about the subject matter that they will help you. No reason at all why you shouldn't do that. And at the point where you feel you're ready, drop me a line.
Absolutely. And I see you in the chat, James. I see you in the chat. You heard it now. There will be opportunities to practice.
So where in the world is James?
Where in the world is James? I don't know. I'll let him answer. We've got someone also saying that they should do WRC content. James is in the UK. So, James?
Right. Well, here's one thing. I actually did have a contact from a friend and colleague, happens to be an Aussie, with a real-world international opportunity for a rally writing PR person at a decent day rate, and I genuinely didn't know anybody that could fill it. That makes me sad.
Well, there you go.
Makes me really sad. That would have been. It wouldn't have been thousands of dollars a racing weekend, but it would have been in the middle to high hundreds per racing weekend for an entry level.
Damn.
That's proper money.
Yeah.
That's proper money. There you go. So it's in the UK. Okay.
Is that still going? Is that rally position still going?
I thought you meant the UK. UK's just about still going. I don't know is the honest answer. I'll ask the question.
Yeah.
Well, if anyone's interested and thinks they've got the skill set, but I believe would need to travel to events. It's the European Rally Championship. Looking for somebody.
You said that was a colleague in Australia. I got excited for a second there.
Yeah, you can't do that one from distance, pal.
Right.
But there you go.
Well, I think that's the end. I think that would be a nice spot to end this question and answer or this AMA podcast. Graham, thank you very much for doing this with us.
A delight as always. Oscar's now decided, by the way, that probably it's about time that he went for a bit of a kip. There's still a sandwich here, so you'll be getting a part of that once we're done. Boys and girls, enjoy the season. Keep up the good work and keeping it real on the server and on Reddit. Ultimately, it's still one of the nicest places to be. Yes, I do look in while we're commentating on a range of the broadcasts that we do in the ELMS and the FIAWEC. We'll be doing a lot more of that. ELMS, by the way, we will be doing our questions, not my choice, but through the YouTube chat this year. And hopefully that stays as clean as it was for the most part this last time. I do wish they'd put some moderation into it, but they don't appear to be in a hurry to do that. But again, with WEC, we'll do the same. We do get to the stage where we've got delays, we'll be reaching out. Please feel free to contribute as well to the questions on the week in sports cars. Marshall, now back in the land of living, he's not been very well at all, but the call for questions is out for that. Feel free to dive in and enjoy your season. And if you can get trackside anywhere that you think I'm going to be, please tell me you're going to be there. It'd be nice to say hello. The 2 or 3 of you that have reached out about Watkins Glen in particular, I'll be in touch, and I might actually need to be reminded about who those people are. But once I know what my travelling arrangements are, I can tell you already agreed is there's going to be a couple of experiences that people will like. And there might be one particular experience for anybody that's coming to Petit Le Mans at the end of the year, which, trust me, if we can pull this one off, is going to be absolutely mega.
I'm scared that you're giving experiences to people, Graham.
Well, let's put it this way. Once people find out what it is we may be offering.
I know what it is. You've told me this one. You've told me this one.
It's a cracker, isn't it? How good is it?
I want to go to Road Atlanta now. I want to go to Road Atlanta. Do you want me to cover Road Atlanta? Do you want to pay for me to come across?
But let's wait and see. Again, the idea is more ideas, more and better. Let's get people feeling good again about getting involved directly in motorsport and the enthusiasm that it engenders, because we all need it. It's been a shitty couple of years, and now it's time to start living again before the climate shutters come down.
Yeah, that's the truth, isn't it? One out of the frying pan and into the fryer, maybe. Thank you very much, Graham. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's been a privilege. Thank you to everyone in the live chat and everyone who submitted questions. You made this show go very, very quickly. It's hard to believe that this was 2 hours. And thank you, everyone who's been listening. I've been Michael Zalavari. Peace out.